Instructors seem to either think that we absolutely should not allow students that have different physical, cognitive, or emotional needs to learn how to walk behind or be allowed to walk behind the horse. And then some instructors are really not sure, and they've just been doing what they've been told by whoever the instructor is that has taught them. We should absolutely have respect for it and what can happen. A little spoiler here. I strongly believe that we should be teaching our students. Let's talk about an industry hot topic and one that is sometimes debated among instructors. So whether or not we should allow our students that participate in adaptive, or also called therapeutic, horsemanship and riding lessons to walk behind horses seems to be kind of a split decision between instructors. And instructors seem to either think that we absolutely should not allow students that have different physical, cognitive, or emotional needs to learn how to walk behind or be allowed to walk behind the horse. Some say, yes, we absolutely should. And then some instructors are really not sure, and they kind of have undecided opinions, and they've just been doing what they've been told by whoever the instructor is that has taught them. So in this chat, I want to go ahead and give you some information on what my professional opinion is on this topic. And I'm also going to give you my what's, how's, and why's on how I teach and approach this topic with the students that I teach, no matter what their individual ability level is, whether you're teaching traditional lessons or adaptive or therapeutic horseback riding or horsemanship lessons. So my name is Sabra Popoli, and I'm the owner and founder of Hoof Falls and Footfalls. And through Hoof Falls and Footfalls, I am on a mission to educate, equip, and encourage instructors, not only here in the US where I'm based, but also across the globe, to safely and professionally serve all ability levels of students that you are working with or hope to work with in the future. So during my time teaching both traditional and adaptive lessons, which is now well over 15 years, this topic has come up quite often when I'm training new instructors or when I go visit other barns in the industry. And it's also a topic that I've seen actually change on what the instructor believes is correct or right or safe, depending on if they're teaching traditional lessons, so to a student that doesn't have a formal diagnosis, or more of an adaptive, or also called therapeutic lesson, where the student might have a formal diagnosis that impacts their physical, cognitive, or emotional abilities. With this topic, little spoiler here, I strongly believe that we should be teaching our students how to safely go behind our horses. And the reason why is because I would rather my students learn how to safely go behind a horse with me and learn the safe way to do so, and then also how we learn equine behavior, and then also how we learn when and how we approach horses that we don't know. I want that to be done in my barn so I can hopefully give them the tools to go out and do it somewhere else. I'm also not one for fear-mongering and just making our students afraid of that horse's hind end. We should absolutely have respect for it and what can happen, but that does not mean that we need to make them afraid of working around that horse's hind end when we are actually doing it respectfully and doing it well prepared. When I teach my students how to go behind horses, this is actually the biggest horse I have in my lesson program. So he is a big guy. So I do have some younger students I work with 4 years old and up that will possibly work with a larger horse. So I'll show you how I would show an adult or a teen my size to go around a full-size horse, and also how we can kind of modify if you're working with a shorter student or a student that might have some type of ambulation device or equipment. And the reason why I want my students to be able to go around the back of the horse, not only so that they learn it here with me in hopefully what is a safe and correct way and teaches them other life skills, but also it's just a practical way of working with our horses in the barn. So whether your horse might be cross-tied or they're hard or soft tied to a tie post or a fence line, we might absolutely need to safely go behind a horse in order to save time and be able to do stuff on both sides of the horse. Here in this setting, I could safely go around the front of my horse because he's cross-tied right now and we have a lot of room in front of him. But if he was hard or soft tied to the fence in front of him, I would not teach my student to go under that lead rope or under the neck of the horse. I would actually opt for what I would say is a safer option of going around the hind end of the horse. So with my students, when we learn how to go behind a horse, one, we assess the situation. So is it safe? Is there anything around my horse's hind end that is going to be too close and I need to ask my horse to move? What is their body language saying right now? So we're looking at eyes and ears and which eye is kind of on us. And then also just overall body position, and are they alert? Are they relaxed? What's going on? So when we do go behind the horse, I teach what's called a safety hand. So we put closest hand on the horse, we hug the tail with our armpit, we walk to the other side, and then if I need to come back around, same thing. Closest hand is going to come by that horse and stay close. And we want to stay close to that horse instead of way far away, because if that horse does step back into us or decide to lift a leg, the least amount of momentum that they can get is going to hurt or damage us the least. And I can also, if I am close here and have my hand on him, I can feel if that horse is going to shift. Whereas if I'm kind of floating out here in the middle of no man's land, I can't tell whether or not that horse is actually going to shift unless I'm looking. So hand on the tush, get as close as possible. It's kind of like if you've ever been hit before, the closer someone is to hit you, it's not going to hurt as much as if they are able to extend to that full range of motion. So we don't want to let our horse's leg gain that momentum and additional strength. So if I'm working with a larger horse and a shorter student, what I would teach them then is to reach up as high as they can. Their little hand might only reach halfway up the hindquarters here, but then we just take our hand and we slide it over the tail and slide onto the hindquarters of the other side and then back around just like this. And I'll tell them that it's so that our horse knows that we're crossing from one side to the other and that we're just being polite and telling that horse where we're going to be so that he doesn't actually accidentally take a step back behind him or shift when we're there because he wasn't aware of us being there. And then something that we'll often to discuss as well during that lesson is we'll watch that horse, and he's staring off at neighbors right now. But a lot of times when we go behind our horse, if we watch their eye and their ear and their neck and head, it'll slightly shift to one side or the other as that horse is observing you going from their left to their right side and then back over. So it's a really neat little shift that we can show our students of how that horse is paying attention and shifting their own body language to be respectful of the humans that are working around them. I will absolutely tell the students that if we suddenly approach horses from behind, it could startle them, and the horse might react in a way that is ask questions later and act first because they're prey animals. So that could be a sudden kick out because they don't know what's coming at their legs. But I have found actually that we want to use a safety hand, not just for that kick, but to not get bumped into as that horse might shift back a bit. And we don't want to get stepped on if that horse is moving a touch and didn't know that we were going behind them. So that's actually when I find people get hurt the most or even potentially stepped on, is they go to move behind the horse, that horse moves and then bumps into them, not necessarily kicks them, but we just kind of have a little mini collision there. But if I have my hand on my horse there and he knows I'm walking behind him, he's not going to shift that weight back because he knows that I'm going to be going and transferring sides or doing something with his tail or whatever he needs to do. With horses that they don't know, we will have a discussion how they should not, one, approach a horse at all without asking permission from the person who owns them, because you never know the history of the horse, whether or not they're friendly, whether or not they've been socialized to smaller people, adults, whatever it is. So we always ask first before we touch. And then I also teach my students to ask the owner how they would like them to go around that horse, depending on how that horse is trained. So that is kind of a life skill thing that I try to really teach my students. It's something I teach my own kids as it relates to any animal, not just horses, but also dogs that we might see out at Home Depot, or people's cats at their houses or whatever. We don't touch an animal and approach it without the owner's permission. And even then, we still need to be assessing the situation and the safety and whether or not it really is safe to approach, or is that animal's body language telling us, ooh, you know what, we probably shouldn't, and I'm just going to say no thank you, even though the owner is offering that to me. So really great life skills that can be learned from having that discussion of how to safely walk behind our horses. If your student has ambulation devices or equipment, so crutches, a cane, a walker, a wheelchair, you would want to assess your working area, see how much room we have to go in front of or behind that horse. Is that equipment potentially going to catch on a hoof or a leg? It could potentially be safe to go around the horse with some type of ambulation device and equipment. You would want to school the horse before you allow your student to do that. So you yourself as the instructor would practice, and then we would have the student do it in a safe manner. Or if it's not safe to do it behind the horse just because of the type of equipment and the space you're working in, we might then need to figure out how we turn that horse around and allow that student to go more around the front of that horse. Or as we're changing sides, we might go all the way out of that kick zone and bump zone of the horse all the way over to the other side. But sometimes for practicality and time's sake, it just might be easier to turn that horse around, have somebody hold it loosely while that student is working around the horse, so that we can move around the front of the horse a little bit more easier than going behind. I strongly believe that it is absolutely safe and something we should be teaching our students how to do safely and correctly, and using their brains and teaching critical thinking skills and life skills when it comes to walking behind horses in adaptive or therapeutic horsemanship and horseback riding lessons. And what we practice here also transfers out into the arena when we're working around our horse, whether we're checking tack or adjusting stirrups and just moving around the animals in general. So let me know what you think. What camp are you in? Are you camp, yes, we teach students how to walk behind horses? No, we do not let them walk behind horses at all. Are you one that you weren't sure if you were actually supposed to allow students to walk behind horses? Did you think that there was a different rule for adaptive or therapeutic versus traditional lessons? I want to hear below in the comments. And then also, no matter where you're listening to this video or this chat, whether it's a podcast or YouTube or Intuitive Instructor Club, let me know if you guys have any additional questions, whether it's about horses, teaching theory and techniques, managing students, managing volunteers, anything that relates to adaptive and therapeutic horseback riding and groundwork. I would love to address those questions. This topic is one that comes up quite a bit when I do instructor training, and people come out to my barn and they watch me teach lessons and see that my students know how to walk behind horses. So this topic was inspired by you guys and other fellow instructors. Thank you again for tuning into this chat. I hope it was informative, and I look forward to reading your guys' comments and feedback on this topic.